regularly stated meeting for February 22nd, 2021 to order. Candy, please collect the roll.
We'll take the roll. Please state your location. Mrs. Sealing. Here at Hilltop. Mr. Hoffman.
Here at Hilltop.
Mr. Winbolt.
Here at Hilltop.
Mr. Updike.
Here at Hilltop.
Mrs. Mitchell. Here at Hilltop. Mr. Anderson.
Hilltop.
Done.
Thank you. First item on our agenda is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded for approval of the agenda. Any comments, corrections, or edits? Discussion. Candy, please collect the roll, or take the vote.
We'll start the vote with Mrs. Sealing. Yes. Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt.
Yes.
Mr. Updike.
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell. Yes. Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Approved.
Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good, thank you. Moving on to our building presentation, Dr. Burke.
Yeah, if the board remembers, these are normally done in the mornings, and that we move these to an evening. And so I am turning this over to Tammy Endicott. She is the principal at Spring Hill Elementary School.
Did I mess it up? Oh, no, I got it. I can hear myself. Hi, good evening. I just wanted to spend a few minutes tonight kind of talking about Spring Hill Elementary and bragging on Spring Hill Elementary. It's a school that I love working at. It's the team that I love working with, the students that I love working with, the parents that I love working with. So I always feel very privileged to work at Spring Hill Elementary School, and just wanted to highlight a few things for you tonight. The mission, the first couple of slides are the mission and vision statement, and these are things that, these two things we've worked on a couple years back, kind of really digging in. We spent several months kind of digging into what we felt was important for our building, and so these are the mission and vision. The vision is the one that we really kind of try to go back to over and over and over again. It kind of guides everything that we do. We posted it in all classrooms. The mission and the vision statement is in every single classroom. When we were having PLCs, we haven't had them this year, but when we were having PLCs, the teachers would pull them up before every meeting, and we would go over them before every meeting. When we're in our staff meetings, we go over this statement, and just really try to keep it in front of us and the students. At the leadership crews that we have in place, this year we don't, but we have in the past, and we will again. The fifth graders were leading those crews, and they would pull up the vision statement and all the things that they would decide, the goals that they were deciding they were working on for each crew. They would look at this vision statement and make sure that they were following it, and that what they decided fit that vision statement. And so the next slide is, the bigger the challenge, the bigger the opportunity. And this year has definitely been a challenge in lots of ways. But we have also found some opportunities in this challenging year, and I wanted to highlight a couple of those. It's kind of one of those things where you say, why did it take a pandemic for us to figure out that this is a better way to do this? And that's kind of some of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the interstate and picture taking. In the past, we've had 3 or 4 volunteers, and they take each class, they take them down to the gym. Sometimes we lose 30 minutes to 40 minutes of academic time, and to get them down, get their pictures taken, get them back to class. Well, we had to kind of rethink that this year. We didn't have fall pictures, but in our spring pictures, we had to rethink it. And so what we decided to do, we usually have 3 cameras. We have 3 pods. Makes sense, right? So we put a camera in each pod. And the nice thing about that is we didn't have any volunteers. The old way of doing it took all day. It was an all-day event. This time, when we put them in each pod, the teacher would come out and stand in the doorway when it was their class's turn, and they would send 2 kids out, and as soon as those were coming back, they would send more. And in about 7 minutes' time, that class was done and back to learning, and then the next class went. And by that, we finished the entire school by 10 o'clock that morning. It was crazy. And I went and talked to Interstate, the staff that was there from Interstate. I said, what did you guys think about this? And they were like, oh my gosh, we love it. It went so smooth. It was great. And the staff said the same thing. The students were back to class. It was amazing. It was one of those things where like, why did we not ever think about doing this before? So that's something we're going to continue as we go year to year, because it works so well. Something else, a second thing that's really been a game changer for us, and that we've heard a lot of positive comments from our parents, is the pickup line. And typically in the past, you know, I'm sure that we had cars down Webster and just kind of a crazy time. All the kids would come out at the same time. Staff were out there trying to man all the car riders and get them all, keep them under control while they were at the end of the school day wanting to just take off. And so Phil Elliott and his team helped us to develop a system that I kind of wanted to talk to you about tonight. If you look in that packet I gave you, the page after Spring Hill Elementary, I gave you a copy of, this is one page out of 12 of all of our students. And basically, this is what Sharon and Amy keep track of on a daily basis. So you'll see all the black check marks, the bus and walkers and the Y care are defaulted, and they stay that way unless there's a change. And if there's a change, then Amy or Sharon will go in and just change it over to walker, Y care, whatever. As the car riders come in at the end of the day, I have a little video that we're going to show you in just a second, but as they come in at the end of the day, someone goes out to the cars. There's a family ID number. They call the family ID number into a staff member that's inside who checks this box. The next page over is what the classroom teacher sees. So the classroom teachers stay in the classroom. The paras and the support staff go out and supervise. So the next page that's got some colors on it are what the teachers see. And so you can see this is up to date as soon as, where before Sharon and Amy were having to call down and say, hey, there's a transportation change. Everything is kept on this, and it's up to date as soon as that teacher brings it up. If the teacher has it up and something changes while that last 5 minutes, then it'll change the color immediately right there and notify the teacher in that moment. And so the ones that are all in white there, those are all car riders. So what happens is when the car comes in, they call in the number, it goes it gets checked, goes in and gets checked, and it immediately changes over to purple. The classroom teacher sees it, excuses that student goes out. By the time the parent comes up to the front of the building, that student is there and ready to get in the car. And it has just been seamless and wonderful. And I have a quick little video. It's really hard to hear, but it'll kind of give you an overview of kind of what we're talking about. 5577. 5449. Okay. 6139. Okay. Bye, Parker. And you can see here, we don't have a lot of kids standing outside. We have those two who are waiting for a car that's further down, but the rest of them are coming out and getting right into the cars. And then we call bus numbers 2 at a time to load, which has worked well. But the main thing I wanted to show you was the car rider line, because it's very smooth. The parents love it.
Walkers meeting siblings may now be dismissed. Walkers meeting siblings may now be dismissed.
And this is all happening at the same time. Buses are being dismissed as car riders are being dismissed.
What if you didn't fix the spreadsheet? Then everybody wouldn't have the right transportation. Mass chaos without these two ladies right here.
And that is true. Those are our two rocks of our school that keep everything going smoothly. But this pickup thing has just been phenomenal, and it's something that we will continue to do. And it's one thing after about the first day, too, it was not working properly. It was mass chaos, and we were all running everywhere, and it was hot as all get out. I mean, I thought I was going to have a stroke by the time I came back in trying to get cars off of Webster. But after that first day, it was one day, the second day we figured it out, and by that second day we were running smooth, and it's been running smooth ever since, and we've gotten lots of compliments from parents. They love it. So something that we will continue to do, and I wanted to thank Phil and his team for that, because without them we wouldn't be doing it. It's a lot safer for our kids when you talk about the climate changes too, when it's really cold or raining and that kind of thing. They're not standing out there, or we're not having to change what we're doing to get them outside. It just keeps going the way it is every single day. One of the other things I wanted to highlight that we are just over the moon about and completely psyched about is our new book vending machine. Our librarian, Shelley Huber, applied for a grant through Spring Hill Education Foundation, and we have a quick video on that I'm going to show you as well.
This is Inchi, our new bookworm vending machine. The funds were generously donated by the Spring Hill Education Foundation in a grant, and we're so thankful to them for that, to bring this to our school. This was important for us to get because it can help build the home literacy library for the students. The students get to take all the books home and keep them, and it's really cool for them to build their library at home. Our PTO generously donates a book for each student to get a birthday book, so they can come down and get a coin, and they get to put it in the slot, and it drops whichever book they want, and they get to take it home. The kids are really excited about that. We also are using this for the children are going to set goals every quarter, so they set a goal with their teacher, and when they achieve that goal, they get to come down and get a token and get to use the vending machine. So it's built a lot of excitement. We're one of the first few schools in Kansas that has one of these, so we're super excited about it, and the kids have loved looking at it, and they all can't wait to use it at some point, hopefully before the end of the school year. So we're very thankful for everyone who is helping keep this going for us, and it's just going to be such a positive thing for our school.
I've seen a bunch of vending machines, so I knew that, like, when you push the buttons, the spirals will spin, and the book will, or snack or whatever is in the vending machine will just fall down here, and then you push your hand through and you grab it. I got the one and only Ivan because my dad said we were getting a gorilla. I didn't believe him because I know that you can't get a gorilla. I would get Rowley Jefferson's Awesome Friendly Adventure, and I know how to get it by reaching like a big goal.
So one of the things that we've talked about at our building, and this is we've just hit the surface of what we can use this for, but our birthday books, they get to come. So every student this year will be able to come and get a birthday book. The goals that we're setting is we're really working on grit, and that the goals that they set are big goals, not just something that is easily obtainable, but something that they have to really work for. In your packet, I gave you, there's a little pamphlet about the book vending machine, and on the very back of it, Shelley has been working with Misty Etchison on this because obviously we need to have books that we can put back into this machine. So PTO is purchasing birthday books, but we're also going to be at the end of this year reaching out to our businesses in our community and to see if they would donate money towards purchasing books. And then at the very bottom, you'll see if they donate over $250, that we would place a placard in the book that gives advertising to those businesses. And so I'm kind of excited about this because I feel like this also touches on the district strategic plan of working with our community members to help support our students. And so, you know, we've really been excited about this whole book vending machine, and the kids have been psyched about it. We even have some that we have a couple of students, or at-risk students, who have some behaviors that when they run, we know where they're going. They go straight to the vending machine now because they like to look at the lights and all the books, so that's pretty awesome. But it's been a great thing, and we're hoping to really work with the community to keep this going and keep the excitement going and keep as many books in there as we can. At some point, we even talked about maybe we'll put some adult books in there. I mean, not adult books, that sounds terrible, but like teacher books. Sorry, that sounded really bad. Teacher books, let me clarify that. That teachers could go in and get and have them excited about the whole thing too. So, and then the last thing that I kind of want to talk about is where have we been and where are we going? So the next page in your packet is a 5-year social emotional school improvement process that we just completed in the 2019-2020 school year. We started in 15, and we started with responsibility-centered discipline, which I've talked to you guys about before. We've continued, everything on this page we have continued to use, and you can kind of see that in 15 up to about mid-year of 2017, we continue to implement things, responsibility-centered discipline, the 7 habits, the goal setting with the leadership notebooks, our care team to help with our social emotional, daily 5 giving choices, and then our leadership cruise. And then about mid-year 17, like January of 2018 through 20, we really just kind of started to tried to improve on all the things that we had implemented. And so that's kind of, I gave you a copy because it's a little bit easier to read. But you'll notice in January of 2018, we added a behavior interventionist to our building, and that was a game changer for us. Before that, I don't know, I was doing my job at night, and our counselor was doing her job at night and meeting with kids as best she could, but we were dealing mostly with behaviors. We added the behavior interventionist, and it was about a month or 2 after that that I told Dr. Burke and Mr. Wilson that I feel like a principal again. I forgot what being a principal felt like, but I was able to be a principal again. And the nice thing that she has added is we are able to actually follow through with what we preach to our kids and being proactive about behaviors. She watches the responsibility-centered discipline Google Drive where the teachers input information. She goes in and she observes students and teachers and how they're interacting. She helps teachers train teachers and helps teachers set up plans. She meets with some of our more high-risk students of social emotional to provide different types of strategies and lessons for them. And it has just been a game changer for our building. And I can't imagine, I can't imagine because I had to deal with it at the beginning of this year. She was on maternity leave and it made us go, whew, we're really glad we have this position when she got back. And so we really appreciate, that's Amanda Phelps. She was a SPED teacher that came out of SPED and is now our behavior interventionist. She's excellent at what she does. And she's also helping Cindy Jottis with some more district type things at all the elementary schools as well. But she's really good at what she does, and it really has been a game changer for us. The other thing I wanted to highlight on this sheet is this year we have not been able to do crews obviously because of the pandemic. That was one of the things we have missed the most. It really has changed the dynamics in our building because when you have crews with kindergarten through 5th graders on there and they see each other in the hallway and they're waving and they know each other, and it just feels very disconnected this year. We're not as connected as we usually are. But the thing that I love is that in 1920, the 5th graders, we got to the point where the 5th graders were leading these crews. Not the teachers, it was the 5th graders. And we, all the 5th graders were assigned to crews, and we spent, if you'll notice in there that we have a 30-minute time each day where we're teaching 7 habits, social emotional skills. We're working on some of those goal-setting type activities. And one day a week, we would take the 5th graders into the cafeteria, and they would get in their crews, and we would have every 5th grade teacher, myself, the counselor, support staff who were not in a classroom at that time, and we would teach them how to lead these crews and what did they want to do? How do you go back to the mission statement, make sure your project matches the mission statement? How do you gather your materials? How do you lead the kids that are younger than you? And it really went back to the vision statement of empowering our students, because it really empowered our 5th graders, and it was fun to see. And the staff loved it because they got to sit back and just help them facilitate. And it was something that we really look forward to getting back to. So where are we going? This year I have been working with our leadership team to work through our building strategic plan that matches the district strategic plan. We've probably had, we've met every other week for about an hour, probably 6 to 8 times. I can't even keep track anymore. But the 2 things that we decided that we're kind of really wanting to work on is reading. We want to focus on reading, and we want to strengthen our core instruction. And then we also want to make sure we have a structure for intervention. We've always done intervention, but it's every grade level and every teacher kind of doing their own thing, and other than our title teachers, and we want to make sure we've got a structure in place. Right now, all the information that we came up with is with our data team, and our data team is looking over all of our data and looking for trends and patterns and helping us to fine-tune this, even get more fine-tuned and focused on different things that we can kind of do the same thing we did with social emotional and begin to build and make sure we meet our goal at the end of 5 years. With that, that's really all I had to present to you tonight. I'm open to any questions. Spring Hill Elementary School is a great school with great staff and great students and great parents. And again, I am privileged to work there with them. I enjoy coming to work every day. My day goes by really, really fast. Every day is different and every challenge is different, but that's what makes our school us. It's the challenges, the successes, the opportunities, and we grab those and we take them and we move forward with them. And that's what I love about working with our team. So what questions do you have for me?
Well, first, congratulations. It's a great presentation. And one of the things that I think is so critical, and you've just very eloquently encapsulated it in this presentation, is that what we first perceived as challenges at the beginning of the year have turned into amazing opportunities. You talked about the picture taking. What I heard is it used to take 7 hours and now it's 2. So you have 5 additional hours, contact hours of education. What an amazing opportunity that you've created through that. And then the pickup times, having just seen that video, seeing how smoothly everything worked. It's eliminated, my perception, it's eliminated some of the chaos, and it's created a consistency, it's created clarity, and people have a lot of trust around clarity and consistency. And so I'd say not only does it work better, but I think probably students, parents, staff have a higher level of trust within that system. You hit on a really important word that we're always concerned about, and that's safety of the students. Not only is it more efficient, it's also safer for the students. And I would probably expand that to say the teachers that are teachers and staff that are out there, air traffic controlling. So congratulations on that. It's such a great to hear how the mindset has been originally as a challenge and now it's an opportunity. It's something we're going to do better. I mean, you started out, you said, who knew it would take a pandemic to put us into this mode? But you've been successful about that, obviously. I really don't have any questions. Well, I had one. When you talk about the reading, the strategic planning you're doing around reading, and something else I noticed that is really great to hear is the consistent alignment you're driving for your building's mission and vision up through our strategic plan, up through the district's mission and vision. Having that alignment creates a very strong organization, and I think that's very helpful. You talked about one of your focus areas is on reading and having less than 20% of students needing intervention. How does that happen now?
How does our intervention system happen now?
Well, I guess 2 questions. What is the current percentage of students needing intervention, and then how does that proceed currently? Because I know that's probably going to be
I would say we're about 35, 37% of students needing intervention. And right now, our main intervention system is through title reading and math, because I'm privileged enough to have a title reading teacher and a title math teacher. And then our teachers in the past, not this year, but in the past, they have figured out how to provide some intervention time within their grade level. So they might determine based on data where all the kids are needing, and we might have kids who need this, focus on this skill, go into one room and really focus on that, another skill here and another skill here, and our teachers kind of split those kids up, and it's more skill-based. Social emotional as well. We have our care team, we have Amanda Phelps, we have our counselor, we have different people who step up to help with some of that intervention time, and our social worker, of course. And so right now we've kind of piecemealed it together. So I'm really, it's always been a focus, like how are we going to, but it's been more individualized, like how are we going to meet the student's need? We go through the SIT process, of course, all those things. And I'm really looking forward to, as the district is working on, and I point to Mr. Wilson, because as the district is working on the MTCS model or the intervention model, we've been doing a lot of discussions with all the administrators about that. And so he's laid out what the district's expectations are, and then we're taking that and delving deeper into our building and how is that going to work for our building, making sure that what he's put in place or what the district has put in place, we are following at least that. In our building, we've already talked about we're going to do much more than that because we need to. And so I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely it does, yeah. Absolutely it does. And you also just tied during that explanation, you talked about how individual it is, and the district's mission talks about each student. So you can see how that flows down and shows alignment to Spring Hill Elementary School. It's very encouraging, very good to hear the alignment that's being driven and the focus, and hopefully the focus on resources, because it sounds like when you call it a behavior
interventionist?
Yeah, so you gained a resource,
Mm-hmm.
and just the ability to take advantage of that resource has really helped students. And so
Yes.
it's really important that we continue to work to have those resources available.
Yeah.
So,
I just wanted to say that it's such an honor to sit on the site council at your school too, because I've learned so much from you and so proud of that school. I was going to say the behavior interventionist, that has been really eye-opening to hear. I know she hasn't been at all the site council meetings this year because she was on maternity leave, but that's been really interesting to hear. And I do want you to know that she's the talk of the town with that vending machine.
Good, that's what Shelley Huber wanted.
My third grader came home and said, do you know that they have a candy machine that gives them books at the other elementary school? So they're all very jealous, but I think that's really cool and really fun. I love how Shelley presents it too, and just all the fun that has brought to reading and awareness to reading, and how much they really have latched onto that, and they're talking about it on all their sports teams and things. So that's how they hear, word has traveled.
I know Shelley's watching. She'll be very happy to hear that. She's very excited about that machine.
Great, but thank you for your dedication, and just to all of your staff.
Yeah,
Very impressed.
I just have a quick question. Obviously, things are different this year, and are there things that you feel like have really, you've had to adjust in ways that have been kind of counterproductive to your goals that you're trying to do with the kids? And what things are you most looking forward to kind of being able to ease back into?
Yes. We definitely have had to think outside the box on some things. And some things we've had to just, like the leadership cruise, we've had to just say we can't do it this year. And that was a disappointment to a lot of our students and our staff. We're really looking forward to getting those leadership crews back, because it really changes the climate of our building tremendously. When you talk about our staff, we have felt disconnected from each other this year. And I am just so looking forward to we're a very social group. We get together outside of school. We're always pulling pranks on each other, and you hear a lot of, we get down to business and we get what we need to get done, but we also have a lot of laughter in our building, and we haven't heard that as much this year, and we just feel very disconnected. And it's hard when you're dealing with some challenging situations to have that disconnect. And I really am looking forward to getting that back. As well as just, and this sounds really funny, but part of what we had to not do this year was what we call our transition room in our special education department. And it's kind of a room that kids can go to take a break. It's a room, and it's supervised. It's a room that kids can go to get just to regulate, and a room that kind of before you get to like an ESI, a seclusion and restraint type situation, it's just another place. We have really missed that, and are looking forward to getting that back. We've made it work, and we're doing well, but it's still just that one little thing where you go, man, I can't wait to get that back. And I know just off the top of my head, those are the three things that I can think of right off the top. I know small group instruction was a struggle for a while, but they've kind of got that up and going, and they're doing really well with small group instruction and figuring out some of how to use some of those strategies that we didn't feel like we could use the first semester. We've started using those, and that's gotten us back to some normalcy. But getting back to some normalcy where we can feel like I'm sure we're going to be wearing masks again next year, but if we can, hopefully some of the mitigation is not as intense so that we can really get back to what we're all about in education, and that's what we miss.
I don't have a question, but thanks for all the good news.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
Is that it? Okay, thank you.
Nice job, Tammy.
Moving on to public participation. Candy?
We have no cards.
Moving on to consent agenda, which includes approval of the consent agenda, approval of the minutes from our last stated meeting, clerk's report, treasurer's report, payroll and claims, personnel, and district fees for 21-22.
Move for approval.
It's moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as read. Any discussion, additions, or changes? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start the vote with Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing.
Yes.
Approved.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to action item number 1, approval of the site excavation for middle school number 3. Dr. Burke?
Yeah, as Tim's getting ready to come up here, I think we finalized the sale. And so that was a long process, and we're excited to have that done. And now with that being said, it's time to get to work on, middle school number 3. So, Tim?
Yeah, it's good to have the place for sure. We were very sure, we were pretty confident we would have it, but, to actually have a title turned over and all that, it's good to have that finally in our hands. So, tonight I've got Mike Leisinger with J.E. Dunn with me on this side. He was on that side, but, I'll let Mike share a little bit with you on the bid. Overall, I think we had good coverage on the bid. I'll let Mike go into the details with you. So you've got your own cheat sheet, so.
Yep, so this is just for the civil scope, included the earthwork and the utilities. We had 6 bidders for the earthwork, 9 for utilities. You know, we strive for 3 or 4, so very good coverage there. Also includes some of our initial J. Dunn costs just to get us to the full building package. And so base bid is included there. We've also included alternate 1, that is for some demolition at 175th and Ridgeview. That's the existing house and structures there. Tim's gonna negotiate whether they want to do that with the developer, so we may end up pulling that out. That's in here now. Worst case, we would deduct it later, but we have the pricing in there. Alternate 2 is not accepted. There were just some clarifications with Water 1 on where the water was gonna come from, but we didn't end up taking that. And so overall, this is for the civil. In parallel, we're estimating the building costs. And so you might recall that we were going to bid this job earlier, you know, before the property took a little longer. So there's some escalation, there's some differences in site, but we reviewed some of the contingencies and still feel comfortable with the overall budget. And so in parallel with that, we're also looking at some value engineering. And so just big picture, we'll be bidding out the building package in the month of March and then open bids in April. So, but again, today we're just here for the civil bids and for those 2 contractors to get approved.
You will notice on the earthwork, and actually they bid a combo bid as well, a company Superior excavating bid, and they did not include a bunch of rock they were supposed to have in, and that's why they were so much cheaper. One of the good things with J.E. Dunn, and I love how they go through these bids, and when you see somebody that's significantly cheaper, we have that opportunity to visit with them and find out, did you include everything? And you know, as long as I've been doing this, I remember back when we were building that early childhood center back then in middle school, and we had a contractor that estimated the walls for the gymnasium there, and he forgot to, he did a north and an east wall, and then he forgot to double that. And when you're doing the masonry and you leave out almost half the walls, you know, he offered to go ahead and do the job, but he said, I'll probably go bankrupt in the middle of it and all that. And so while we have bid bonds, we could potentially hold them to that. Some companies will go ahead and try to do it and then try to make it up, and they would prefer not to do it, I believe, and it's better to let them out than try to fight them and have them go up in the middle of it, or you know, delay the project and all that things, or to try to change order you to death, or to do a lot of other things. So, but otherwise we're comfortable. You will recall this project is, quite a little bit late getting started too, from where we were, so, while we've got money left in contingencies and stuff through the bond issue, luckily this is the last project, and that's where we're basing all of this on, is being able to spend the rest of the money in the bond issue, so, out for this project, so.
I did have a question that the contingency seemed kind of low for this type of a package. Are we pretty confident with the quality of the soil and we've got a lot of borings and stuff that.
We did the job unclassified, so they get borings, and so they're responsible for the rock excavation.
But we did, I don't know, 35, 40 borings out there, already, and that actually led into a little bit of redesign of instead of going with just a spread footing and stuff in a lot of places, we're going to have to put some piers in some areas as well when we get to the concrete and stuff like that in this next, and all that's already included in our estimates for the full project that we've been doing, so, yeah, it's important for us for planning as well as for the bids and to give them the information so they can make a good bid based on that, so.
I got a couple of questions, actually three. One just came up. Are we building the exact same site plan as middle school too? Or exact same building? Okay, with whatever.
With some minor modifications.
Things we needed to modify,
yeah, some minor.
Next question. I know it's in here, I'm not seeing it. What was the actual budgeted amount?
For the combined, the utilities and the earthwork, we came in about $200K over, what we had. When we compared with those contractors, the main couple things we had was, our temporary roads amount was lower that we had estimated. We think that's due to rock excavation, what we assume for a premium. There was some bond costs that we didn't have in our estimate, and then there was one other kind of minor thing.
But you're saying we're 200,000 above what we budgeted for this?
Correct, yep. And a lot of that has to do with just it being a different site than Woodland Spring.
Okay.
Not knowing that it's bond time.
And I guess the last question is, what are the permits required to demo a building? What's that all about?
City's not requiring anything. We're getting a land disturbance permit and sanitary and building.
At this point.
That's
now, when we get ready for the rest of the building package, there'll be more permits and stuff like that. When we get for the full building package, we'll have those. And those general requirements and that general part of the general requirements and those permits will be included at that time.
Okay, I just said they're not included in the base bid, but there are some permits in the demo. I didn't know why you would need a permit for demo.
City of Olathe it's about a $500 permit to tear down the building up there. There's also a septic condemnation or permit to make sure we take care of the septic system that's there as well, so.
Get a little late.
So you have to tear out the septic system?
You don't have to tear the full thing out, you just have to, the septic tank and all that, you've got to.
And then tie up the line to the laterals type thing, or?
I don't believe you have to do anything with the lateral lines at all, you just have to fill in the septic tank, take it out and fill that area in.
Right. So, we exceeded the bid by $200,000, and that's covered adequately in the overall bond contingency and the building contingency.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, and we're not asking right now, we're not asking, hey, will we transfer money out of this contingency at this point, because we're not at that point. When we bring the building contingency back, that's when we will say, hey, can we transfer out, this much money out of the contingency to cover the full.
So we're not over budget on the project because of this $200,000 increase in our excavation.
Yeah. Let me answer it this way. We will be over budget on the project because of being a year and a half, little over a year behind. There's been a lot of escalation. Mm-hmm. But on the bond, we're not going to be over. We're planning on using the rest of the monies we have in the bond for it. So we've got money to cover it for site acquisition and some of that, because some of this interior stuff that we're doing is actually going to be covered. We're having to build some roads to the part of the roads we're building as part of the site acquisition plan, and so the rest of the site acquisition money we have
little bit left, we'll be using part of that for like the 193rd Street and the 192nd that we have to put in to help the meet the requirements of contract with the developer, so.
So the cost for this building, including the $200,000 overage on the excavation, is covered, adequately covered within the bond, the current bond funding?
Within the, yes.
Okay.
And we're big picture, we think, where we know we're fine, but the other piece is Dayton Creek, we came in 600K over what our estimate was at this stage. So we expect when we get bids, we'll come in under what we're showing right now. We believe we're conservative.
We had more civil work out there than we thought, right? At Dayton Creek?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you know that, steel materials are going up rapidly?
Yeah, I think right now you've got over, since November, we've been watching that, and I think Jeremy was sharing with me, we were looking at that, we've been like 5% a month since November, is that what you're? 20% since November. Yeah, 20% since November on steel, so.
If you can get it.
We're watching that closely, and we're adding a little bit in for that on our not a little bit, a lot, in for our budget, so. The other thing that happens right now is you get your new indexes come out at the first of the year, and we're bidding off the new indexes. A lot of times your estimates are high right after new indexes come out. And so by the time we actually bid this in April to May, we feel like that those indexes will flatten back out, and people won't be as excited about the index. It's kind of a historical thing that happens when you, at the first of the year when the new indexes come out, so, for construction costs.
Any other questions for Tim or Mike?
I just want to reiterate for the public that the reason we didn't have a discussion item on this is because it's something we need to get started now. We need to do the action item now because we just closed on the property, and so we need to get people out on site. So we're just trying to get ahead of our.
Well, and the other reason is because every month, like at the last
Right.
month, I updated you guys on where we were with it, and
to help try
yeah.
to get those costs as low as we can
Yeah.
get them as we're going. So I just want to let everybody know that we may be doing this a little more often, in order to get our costs the way we need it to be. And it's unfortunate, but that's what we have to do.
The one good thing about this, I believe right now, is for the next bond issue, we're a little bit better set for land and where we can build, and we have some property that we own, so we're not going to be trying to work so hard to find more property. Hopefully it'll be in the right area that we have, and so, because that did set us back and is costing us some additional funds because of being behind, with the escalation, so.
This is an action item.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve middle school number 3 earthwork and site utilities bids from Kissick Construction and She Digs It LLC, along with alternate number 1 for demolition for the total construction cost of $3,563,788.
It's moved and seconded to approve the site excavation for middle school number 3 as noted. Any further discussion or questions? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start with Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Approved.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to our second action item is Dayton Creek furniture bid. Dr. Burke?
Tim will kind of walk you through this.
All right,
One thing I would say, and I appreciate what Mr. Winbolt said, but basically, we bring a package to you when we get ready to build a building, and we say what that's going to cost in that building. So we don't bring every item to you individually. Some of these items get put off. So like when we go and do, we may bring a big package of different things, and do that at one point. But the understanding is there's a lot of different things that are going to come in here. We don't bring every item that's over 20,000 to you.
And you will remember as well, I think we did it on Woodland Spring as well. We did an early grading package as well, on that. It's not unusual once you get to the larger projects. The other thing it does is it allows us to, gain 2 or 3 months of construction versus waiting for everything to get done, all of it get done, and that saves us some money as well by being able to pull those out earlier versus waiting for that to escalate as well. So. All right, furniture. I've got in front of you, right here is the total amount of the quote. It's a quote, but it's actually a bid because it's all based on bids. On the other slide that we have there, you'll see each one of the bids, the TIPS, E&I, Sourcewell, all the different contracts, the procurement contracts that we're buying these under. And the total amount that we're interested in having you approved tonight is $477,000, I believe. There's a couple things you won't see. You won't find any student chairs in here. Part of the old Spring Hill Elementary School gym has a bunch of chairs in it. When we went to the furniture last time, the flexible seating, we pulled those out, and so we still have a surplus of those. There's one desk that I would like to have included in here that I would like to have taken off some furniture to do it, but those are being used right now for COVID. And without the crystal ball to make sure that we won't need them next year, I can't say that I definitely will have them back in the building. So we are buying additional furniture that I'd like to have saved at this time. But again, we're well within our budget on furniture. There's actually $1.2 million, I believe, set aside for FF&E. And we also have, Mr. Elliott has his technology stuff that's going to go in. We've got some library books and some other things like that, some building stuff that will be coming out of the FF&E as well. But at this point, we're in very good shape for that with this bid. So. Any questions?
Any questions? Discussion? This is an action item.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the contracts for Kansas contract design for Dayton Creek Elementary furniture purchase in the amount of $477,100.31.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve Dayton Creek furniture bid as noted. Any additional questions or discussion? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start the vote with Mr. Updike.
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing.
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt.
Yes.
Approved.
Very good. Moving on to discussion items. First item of discussion is math textbook adoption process. Dr. Burke?
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Brad Wilson, and he's going to walk you through the process that we followed.
Thank you. So you're going to start with this PowerPoint. This PowerPoint has a lot more words on it than I would like to have in, quote, a presentation, but I want you to have this information for you to look at over the next couple weeks before we get to the point where we're going to be voting on this. So there's a lot to go. Let's start with the first slide. Is we actually started this process almost 2 years ago. When we went to PLCs and you guys voted on allowing PLC time for teachers, the principals got together, elementary principals knew that they have multiple content areas to work in, and they decided actually that spring that they were going to move forward with work in math and so that we could adopt a math resource in this school year, and to implement starting in next school year. And so that actually started with PLC work that teachers did last year. This year, you guys know we, you can go ahead and go to the next one. We then actually hired Dr. Vernita Edwards. She is a friend of the district. She is also a well-experienced curriculum director in an area school district who has retired and now works for Baker, preparing leaders and as well as students to become teachers. And so we decided to, and we've talked about this in another board meeting, that we're going to do this earlier and we're going to go through a more extensive process when we adopt any textbooks from here on out. And so we're bringing this to you in February. And part of the reason we're bringing this to you in February is so that we can get these adopted, start professional development before teachers leave, and they can actually try some of this stuff out in their classroom before the end of the school year, so that then over the summer, they can really do the work to be ready in August for school to start with this new resource. It is a lot of work, I'm going to say especially for elementary. It's not to belittle the work that the secondary has to do with this, but elementary has multiple content areas that they have to do. So anytime they get a new resource, there's a lot of work to be done. So we had a committee of, actually our committee did 7 times they worked together. Many of the times were over Zoom, so that's why you see the Zoom picture there. But they did get a half day together by grade level, and they got to work a half day face-to-face, really pouring over, and after they had already evaluated all of the resources that were brought to them, they got to narrow it down to 3 resources from that. So they narrowed that down. They did a great job. I mean, Dr. Edwards did a very nice job of making sure that first they used the work that they did with PLCs. She also did some work with them to make sure that they had documents that helped them evaluate the rigor, the coherence of the resources. And so they got down to 3 finalists. Once we got to 3 finalists, we actually opened it up for all teachers to participate in this process. And so the vendors of those 3 resources, you'll notice there's 5 there. There were 3 at each level, at middle school as well as at elementary. 2 of them overlapped. And so then they got to show them the tools, the digital tools anymore. These resources are so strong in the digital resources, and work a little bit on the philosophical instructional models that they use. And so all teachers were allowed to view those presentations and to give feedback on those as well. The next slide, I'm going to go back one. So the next slide shows all of the resources that were reviewed. And actually they were vetted before this. There were some that we said, you know what, those are not resources that we need to evaluate. But all the resources on this page have been evaluated by this committee. This committee did a phenomenal job. There were 30 elementary teachers on that committee. I think I put 31 in the thing, but that maybe is including Vernita as well. But there are 30 teachers that did a phenomenal job at the elementary level, and then we had 8 at the secondary level, which is the majority of our math teachers. The finalists at K-5 ended up being Reveal Math, Ready Math, and Big Ideas Math. The finalists at the middle school level were also Reveal, Ready Math, and then what's called Illustrative Math, which is actually an open source resource. Go to the next one. Talked a little bit about the documents, focus, coherence. A lot of this, and I'm going to show you later when we talk about which one they selected. Ed Reports reviews a lot of resources in math and reading, and really did a nice job of focusing in on those and what they ended up coming up with their favorite. I say favorite, it was really a rigorous process that they really evaluated how it met the standards that they had gone through. Ended up being one of the highest rated I've ever seen on Ed Reports. So they had a survey that Vernita gave them to be able to get their feedback. And then, when we got to that point, Vernita handed it off, and it was still, at least for me, not a slam dunk yet. There's costs involved in these. In fact, you'll see it's a pretty big price tag anytime you're going to do a textbook adoption. And remember, this is one of the two biggest content areas, and it's not just K-5, it's K-8, so this is a big one. And so we had to look at really what were we getting the biggest bang for our buck, not just the biggest bang. So we brought principals together. We brought the instructional coaches who had been on these committees to kind of go through why the teachers had selected Ready Math, what they saw as the advantages to Ready Math. Principals evaluated really the priorities district-wide. How does this align to the strategic plan of us ensuring that all kids is what we really want to become really in-depth mathematicians. The thing about math, it's the gateway. We want all kids have to read. We know that. That's the bus driver right there. Kids have to be able to read to be successful in life. But if you really want to talk about the one that opens doors or closes doors onto the careers that kids can have, it's math. And so if we can get all kids to be deeply understand math, then we've got all kids able to go into careers that have a strong or require a strong math background. Doesn't mean they have to, but at least opens that door for them. So this is a big deal for them. After that, then I get the joy of making that final selection and bringing it to you. I'm going to stop right here. It is Ready Math. And you can see they have both a workbook, teacher edition, paper, and then which is consumable. And you guys heard that with the reading last year. Almost everything now with the kids is consumable, and a large part of it is also online. I want to make sure I stop here. You guys have multiple forms of access for this. I know a lot of you sometimes getting that logged into those websites can be a pain sometimes.
That's good.
On the back table here are resources from every grade level, student edition, teacher edition as well. Feel free to rummage through there. You can take whatever you want to from there. I think there's about 14 different books up there because we have multiples at some grade levels. But if you want to take some of that, feel free tonight to rummage through there before you leave and take what you want to. You'll also notice in your executive content on board docs, there's instructions for logging into the iReady. And so we actually made it so you could just click the link and then you can copy and paste those usernames and passwords. So you should be able to get in there fairly easily. I ended up giving you the admin access to that, which means there's a lot that you can do with that. And so it just means that you need to make sure the first two clicks get to the right point, and then it looks more like a teacher would see. Before that, you're able to change passwords, manage users, do all kinds of things that wouldn't be on a teacher's, but would be on the admin one. But I gave you that one because I think that way it's one-stop shop and it's easier to see everything you needed to see on it. If you have any questions between now and the next meeting, please, please, please give me a call. Love to walk you through any of this, love to answer your questions, love if there are some concerns to be able to discuss those as you look through those. So then we're on the what's included. I also included what the official quote is from Ready Math. It's long. No, stop. Go ahead and stop there. Okay, that's a good one. Go ahead and stop on that slide. That quote is really long, and there's lots of stuff in there. If you want to go line by line, I'm happy to go through there. I put that on board docs in the executive section, but I'm just going to tell you that is just what the vendor has to do to make it an official quote that they can give us and that their company then can honor when we do that. We were kind of fortunate. This is an expensive resource, but they, at the last, in fact, today, they cut the price another $50,000 for us. So you'll notice now the price they put as the retail price, which we got it for, I think, under half of that. It's never that much, but they did a pretty good job of cutting it as much as they could. if you go to the next slide that has those three places, this is the Ed Reports review of this resource. It is, like I said, about as high as any I've seen. There is also a more recent report, and you see that usability, which is 36 out of 38. They have one that has 38 out of 38 on those, and those are at different grade levels. The 14 out of 14 for focus and coherence. And then you can see the rigor and mathematical practices. Most of them are 18s with a couple 17s and 16s. So this resource has top notch, and it's why principals and teachers and instructional coaches were sold on this one. But we'll keep going. The what's included, a lot. They did throw in a couple of nice things. One is we've talked about intervention a lot. This comes with an intervention resource as well. So that thing that's called personalized learning, and you'll see two different prices on the quote. One is the base price of what it would cost for a student. They then, for 15% of our kids, threw in what's called iReady, and that is an intervention system that costs a fortune if you're going to buy it by itself. And they threw it in there for a song and a dance. So that was a no-brainer for us to add that in there as well. So go ahead with, and this is all for 7 years. They gave us initially a 5 and a 6 year, but we've been adopting it about 7 years. And if you do not adopt them for a full 7 years, that 6th and 7th years will cost you an arm and a leg, which right now we're paying for in both EDM and Wonders as well. For 7 years, no additional costs, except for if we add new students. And the nice thing is if we add new students, in fact, I talked to her today, she said, yes, you'll get it for what the price that's quoted, that base price up there, which is a pretty good price, because sometimes that's another place they can gouge you if you don't make sure that's part of the bid. But she said also, if you have things that she tends to give you extra students. I'm not sure with our growth, she's going to want to give us all of our growth, but she might throw in a little bit for us. Let's go to the cost. It's a big one. Did we get costs? Oh, there we are. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. So for elementary, it's $302,000 for resources for all of our kids, both digital and paper. And then for middle school, it's $137,000, $38,000 almost for those. Comes to $29 per student per year is what it ends up being for the base package. There are some add-on things that are additional to that, but that's what it would be to add a new student. What questions do you have for me on this? Also, professional development is within that cost as well. It's one of the things, especially the instructional coaches who had experience with professional development from Curriculum Associates, we're very excited about. They say it's the top notch of professional development. I've not personally experienced their professional development, but I hear it's good.
So I have a question on the middle, at least 6 through 8. With us adding a middle school, how does that work for teachers? Because we're going to have to add staff for that as well.
Yeah.
So is that included in this, or it's something we're going to have to think about going forward, but.
Yeah, and so we're still down the road for the middle school. That actually came into play because the initial quote had to do with only 4 elementary schools, and so we just add one on. Essentially what that does, it's by classroom, and so for us, we really don't add a ton of classrooms when we add a building.
Right.
But as every year that we add new teachers, you then add a classroom. They continue, if you notice on there, all of the teacher resources are free. When you do an initial one, they will continue. As we add students and add classes, they give us teacher resources for free.
Okay. Yeah.
We have a few extra teacher resources in this quote right now, so we actually have some growth room in this because we knew that next year, even though we don't know exactly what we're going to add, we know we're going to add students for next year. You'll notice in the quote, they'll do it by grade level. They'll give you a quote. They'll even put it out by building and grade level, but the reality of it is it's purely just the number of licenses. They don't care if it's a kindergarten license or a 5th grade license. A license is a license for them. And so If we have a large kindergarten class and a small first grade class, it doesn't matter where those kids are. Those licenses are the same. So that's given us a lot of room for growth in this a little bit for next year. If we get 600 new students next year, we'll have to buy a little bit more.
Right. But, yeah, it's good to hear that they're going to more of a license instead of just straight textbooks.
Yeah.
It's something that a lot of businesses are going to, is just licensing it out and then bringing them back, especially with the software they have.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because they don't care who's on the software.
Yeah.
Now, they may have to ship us a book and we can ship one back, and that's not a problem.
Right.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Does each student have the option for a hard copy?
Every student will have a hard copy.
That's what I thought, okay.
They will use that hard copy in class.
Mm-hmm.
They will probably use the online in class. It gives some teachers some flexibility how they do it, but typically all teachers use the hard copies. There's actually, of the student books back there, you'll see it says volume 1. They actually have 2 full hard copy books that they have that they work in throughout the year. Teachers can tear stuff out, send it home, that type of thing. Or that same worksheet, that exact same thing that's in hard copy actually is also on the digital tool. They could actually print one out or just say, this is what I want you to work on at home as well. One of the nicest things about this digital platform that, of course, teachers like, but it really is pretty nice, is they have tutorials that kids can work through. So that, and I worked through one actually today on fractions, and it took me about 20 minutes. I mean, it's a pretty in-depth electronic lesson that kids can learn through as well. So if we were ever in the need to have to go virtual, or if we saw that was best for something, there's additional tools in here that can help kids tremendously in that situation. Or if parents at home going, oh, you have to do this homework, I don't know how to help you, it gives the kids a little more resource.
Good. Your procedure is very refreshing that you brought into this. I've been waiting for that for a long time. That's great.
Yeah. Thank you.
I was able to go in online and follow the steps and went right to it, so it was
Oh, good.
good.
I'm glad
Yeah.
you already got in there.
Very good.
I did have Carly in our office go through it, because sometimes when you put it together, it works for me and it doesn't work for the person reading it. So I did have a couple people try it.
And then I was pleased that it wasn't exactly like the old easy, simple, straightforward process, but it was about as close as you could get. It seemed like on addition and multiplication and division, it was fairly close. It wasn't, man, some of those things that have come through in the past years have had so many extra steps you couldn't even figure out what they were talking about. It was hard to help your kids.
Yeah, it's funny, the standards, and this is when the standards came in, they talk about doing it in multiple ways and making sure they understand the concept, but the standard also says, and the standard algorithm. And so many times people missed that final piece that said, you still have to know the standard algorithm when you do math, no matter what the method you are to learn it and to figure out and understand what the standard algorithm means, you've still got to know the standard algorithm. You're probably talking about, you could do anything like partial quotients for division. That's great in understanding what division means, but when you go in high school to divide a polynomial by a monomial, you're not going to use that method. You're going to have to understand the standard method, and I think that's where resources in particular have gotten so much better over the last 10 years.
That's good.
Just they've upped the rigor is what they've done. I know it's a ton of stuff to process. Just do not hesitate to call me. And then you can, assuming you guys have my cell number, you can call me after work anytime. That's not a big deal. Be happy to walk you through any of these, either the costs and the line by line, whatever you need on that. So just make sure to not hesitate, because I'm more than happy to do that.
Any other questions for Mr. Wilson?
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our next discussion item is the solar project, Dr. Burke.
Yeah, well, first of all, the updated solar service agreement is not ready yet, and so we will bring that at a future meeting. However, at the last meeting, I believe that, Mr. Anderson kind of asked to show the grid fitting onto this. I want to take a minute and talk to you guys a little bit about a history. And some of you have been around and some of you haven't. And one thing that I can tell you that sometimes people change the history to fit the way they want it. And so I want to remind some people that this is what actually happened. But back in 2000, the middle school right now, Spring Hill Middle School, was the high school. And we were looking at a bond issue to expand that building, to build onto it. Because when they originally built that building, they had said to the public, as we grow, we'll build onto this building. And also at that time, we were looking at adding an elementary school that would have been at 223rd and Victory. Is that right, Tim? And that bond issue failed in 2000. And in 2001, we brought another very similar bond to expand upon the high school again, to build that elementary again, and that bond issue failed a second time. And so back in, when we did the bond issue in 2016 and 2018, some of our residents that had been around said, hey, you made these promises to us back in the day. Well, we did make those promises, but the bond issues failed. In December, and I asked Doug, I got to give you, Doug Swin is so exact. I said, I believe that bond issue was in 2003. So he sent me the actual verbiage. So December 9th, 2003, we went before the public and we passed a bond issue. And at that time, we were going to, and I love it if I can still bring this up real quick, but we were basically building a high school, and we were constructing, equipping, and furnishing a new elementary school and a new high school building, including the purchase of sites for district facilities, remodel, repair, blah, 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 for $48 million. So back in 2003, we're going to build a high school, and we're going to do all this for an elementary for $48 million. And so that bond issue passed. And just for, not to go into anything negative, but we had a site that we really wanted to put the building on, and right off 191st Street, and things did not work out. So we had to move that site, and we went to the site that was at 199th Street, and we ended up buying that. Now, when we got ready to buy that site, we only wanted 75 acres. That's all we wanted, because that's all we wanted for a high school. The person selling it basically said, I had 150 acres, and you either buy the whole thing or you don't buy anything at all. So we bought that whole site for 150 acres. Again, the reason I'm bringing this up is back in the 2016 and 2018 bonds, there were people that came forward and said, you promised that when you built the high school out there, you're going to build an elementary and a middle school. That is not correct. We only wanted 75 acres. So we basically ended up buying 150 acres because we needed the full site. In 2010, Hilltop, the county came in and wanted to run a water line, a big massive water line that run out through the property. 36-inch, Tim? Does that sound about right? And the school board at that time did not want that water line there. They felt like it was not safe. It was not something that we wanted. And at that time, we were told the utilities companies had the right of way and that we really couldn't do anything about it because we did not have a master plan. And without a master plan, the utilities would go through. So at that point, the school board said, well, we have all this property out at the high school. We need to master plan it. And so at that time, we said, let's see what it looked like with an elementary on there. Let's look like a middle school, and realizing that we would do some other things along with that. So in 2011, that's when we master planned that out at the high school, with the understanding that that may change. So would you mind clicking on the master plan? And so this is what it looks like with the solar array. The reason I'm bringing this up is, in a few years, we may have another bond issue. And I think it's good to be on record to say, this is what happened in the past. So if somebody comes in and said, well, you made these promises in the past and you didn't do what you said, there's a reason that we didn't do what we said. Also, when people say, hey, when you built that, you said you were going to do this. Well, actually, that's not true, because when we built that high school, we didn't want all that acres. We only wanted half of it. And so, but we did master plan it, and if you look at it, Right now, that southeast corner has an educational support building and a district administrative center. That was not part of any master plan when we did this. Up at the middle, top middle, towards the right, we just called that I believe it's called an educational building. Now, we went ahead and put the outline of what a middle school would look like with all the facilities that go on that. But again, that could change. It could be something else. On the north side, we master plan that could be an educational facility as well. So at some point, you may want a ninth grade center out there. At some point, you may want a middle school. You may want an elementary school. You have lots of options. But I thought it'd be good to put on the record that we master plan that mainly to keep the utilities out of there, and that we have plans for it. We don't know exactly what those plans are. We want to be flexible, but at the same time, we don't want a big power line or electrical line or a water line going through the middle of that where we can't, or it takes away our opportunities. So this is a solar array as the way that we kind of proposed it. What is that, Tim? About 2.5 acres? Is that what it, or I'm sorry, Kylie? And it would have a fence around it, and we moved it to that far northeast corner. But again, we have some flexibility on it. And hopefully, knock on wood, we won't really need to build anything out there for another 8 or 9 years, if we decide to build something out there.
Great synopsis. That's exactly how I remember.
So, the road that goes out to the solar array, is that just gonna come off of the current road, you know? It'll be a temporary road. Like a gravel road out to it?
It'll probably follow, whatever is the best path for now. It's not gonna be much of a road at all.
Right, I just figured it'd come off like the educational sports center going out there if we need to. Right. Yep.
And I think, Nels, were you on the board back then? And Eric's not here tonight, but I think it's interesting through the years how some people in the community have kind of changed the story. And I thought it's good to say that, you know, the board always has intentions to follow up what they say, but if we have a bond issue that fails, we have another bond issue that fails, then we go a different direction and it passes. To me, that's the community telling you to do something different.
That was the total community involvement in that one that passed. They didn't want to do what we had looked at before.
Yeah, and I remember before being on the board that the talk of master planning, just to make sure that utility easements aren't in our way to do what we need to do.
We'd have a
so
little
that was a good
control.
idea.
Right. So that we can control and manage.
Yep.
So with that, we're still working on the updated solar agreement. We will bring that back for you. I know that there's some adjustments that we wanted to make. We also have Greg Goheen working on that. Part of the thing is, it asks for a 20-year contract. I believe in the state of Kansas, school district can only do 10-year contracts, so we're having to make some adjustments. And so once we get that back, get it finished, we'll get it back to you.
So is that gonna come back as a discussion item again, or an action item?
It should come back as an action item.
Is everyone or is that a comfort level that the board has? Just as a,
No, we don't have any,
ideas?
that agreement's not in any information we have yet, the original agreement.
Right.
So we haven't seen that.
Oh, okay.
Right, any adjustments, I'll get it to you as soon as we get it, and as soon as Greg signs off on it. So hopefully you'll get a lot more in 2 weeks. Well, 2 weeks' notice is tonight, so as soon as we get it, we'll get it to you. I'm
So is
assuming
that
it'll be very similar to what's in there, except for the time frame.
I think we had something before, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just that the big thing is that
Yeah, it's
20-year versus 10-year time frame.
Yeah, there's an attachment on there now from the old one. If you look at the solar project, the proposal,
You slide all the way down.
Yeah, and it had a schedule of values.
Same one.
then you gotta get out of that and get into the,
Keep going. Nope. Keep going. You're the appendix. Keep going.
Where's the top?
Not the top.
The only question I had, Tim, does that big ridge hill run that's behind the tennis courts, does that run clear across the site? Pretty much, that's why I wondered if it would have been a good place to put it on that hill, so you didn't,
Well,
it
Yeah,
wouldn't
but
impede the rest of your stuff.
well, the reason that we didn't want it, we want it back there is because that is, a future building site is much better up on top of the hill because then it's sewerable all the way to the south. If we pull that there and we'd have to push a future building site back in the corner, then that's not
Okay.
sewerable, so
So it's lower back in that area?
it's much lower back in that corner, so yeah, and that's why we've located a future education up there on that ridge that runs across from behind the former practice soccer field, or practice soccer, I'm not, the field back there, so. And that's why we've located the two buildings where they're at, because they're both in sewerable positions right now versus, trying to, because if we tuck it back down, it runs downhill quite a little bit back in that area, so.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been back there. I just knew we had that big hill that's kind of midway in the site.
I'd like to talk sometime about expanding our tennis courts. The number of students that,
expanding what?
the tennis courts, maybe on the next bond, just because, there's not enough space for them. All the students that the coach has out there, both female and male students.
So the solar array will come back as an action item, right? You can add that in.
I don't see any
for
reason
other
not to.
topics. What?
Not, for me, it's fine.
Okay. Moving on, next discussion item is solar, board retreat report. Dr. Burke?
Are your board retreat, are they showing?
It's just the executive content.
Oh, okay. Couple things. First of all, this was sent, after our board retreat, and we made changes. Brian Jordan worked on that, and he sent, the changes to the board handbook to us. And so, we probably just need to have discussion on that, and at some point, we're gonna need to bring that back, and vote on it. But, to be honest, I kind of went through there, and it looked like he made the changes that we wanted him to make and we asked him to make, but I don't think it's gonna hurt to have additional eyes on it as well. The second aspect of that, and I'm sorry, mine's blocked off. The second aspect is, well, the focus areas were the things that we talked about in there, as a group. And, just basically, let's pause at this point. Do you feel like he kind of covered and gathered the information that you felt was really important and relevant at that meeting? So.
Yeah, I think the way it was broken down into 4 different focus areas, the whole process that we went through, and I really identified a lot of different operating principles that we all agreed on, and so we identified basically 8 of those principles, and then identified focus areas that align with those operating principles. And so I think the process that we went through was valuable, so that we can really break it down into things that we can put focus on, and we don't have 97 goals, that we have very focused, actionable goals that we can accomplish over time. So, I felt like it added value and it was worthwhile.
I agree. I think it was a really good day, and learned a lot from each other, and ready to go forward with working on our focus areas. And I think you're getting ready to talk about this, but start working on our community values.
And since, Jason, and we want to go ahead and get this out of executive content and make it available to the public. There was a values, study plan that, we discussed with Brian, and Brian put together a proposal for us. Now, we'll need to set the dates back a little bit, and he can easily do that. But that's something else, we probably need to discuss, and then, decide on an action plan as to, those focus areas of study.
When would
Are
you
we
like
talking
to?
about the value study plan first, or the focus area? Which do you want to talk about? Let's talk about with the value study plan, start with that.
Okay.
I think one of the keys is to, the discussion that I recall that we had was to really define and clarify the core values of the district, and do that through a process or through a method where we had the right people, we had the right processes, and we used the right tools and data to gather those. I think having KSB provide us that support in that direction, they do this for districts throughout the state. They have experience, they're independent, they can provide that facilitation. I think it's important to have those people to provide the facilitation. Second, I think it's important that parents, patrons, staff, administration, or all have input into that, so that we have a comprehensive, accurate estimation of what the core values are for our district. So I think that's the people component. The process, again, comes back to Kansas Association of School Boards having executed and followed this process successfully throughout the state of Kansas. I think that's a good approach to coming to a consensus on core values. And then finally, tools and data. I think Kansas Association of School Boards is going to know what data we'll create as they work through the process. They'll create the data and develop the tools that we need to complete that successfully. So I think it's worthwhile. I think it adds value to understanding and creating those core values to align with our vision and our mission. Any other comments or?
Dr. Burke, you had mentioned that these dates, where it says dates for interviews, that those are probably going to be pushed back probably into April, maybe, you think?
It could be.
Okay.
A lot just to, I mean, that's spring break, and,
Yeah.
you know, this is something that he just kind of threw out there, and yeah, we'll have to make adjustments for that.
And would these be in person, or do you see them being like Zoom meetings, or?
I think a lot's going to be dependent upon comfortability. So I think you get a lot more out of it if you can do it in person, but I'm not sure everybody would feel comfortable being in person. So it may be some meetings are in person and some are Zoom.
Dr. Burke,
The
when do you
questions
want me to move those?
What?
You can do them now.
Okay.
Oh, any other questions on the value study plan?
We'll just need to set a date on when we need to get all our nominations in.
Yes. Yeah, and I think those are the dates that are currently in that plan. Basically have it starting March 9th. We need to move those back.
Right, I meant when we need, because we're gonna need to put names in ahead of that.
Right, so probably
2
2
weeks
weeks
ahead of
prior. I think probably 2 weeks,
Yeah,
2
Right.
weeks prior to the interview
yeah,
date.
2 or 3
Yeah.
or whatever we think it needs.
Because
to
the
be.
next board meeting is the 8th. So you'd probably need
Of March.
8th of March. But you probably want to start gathering that information now, but then we probably going to need to move this back past spring break.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could try to have our names in by that next board meeting.
Yeah, can you edit this to include? Because we've got, the board has actions in here that, could we add those? I know this is from Brian, but we can modify it, I think. Or Candy, if you can add in the date that, board member recommendations be completed by March 8th. And editing the interview date. Any other questions or comments on the values study plan? So next is the principles. Did you, or the focus areas that we developed over that day. Questions or comments on the focus areas?
Yeah, the one thing that I thought he did a good job of is, I think there were 9 areas, and he was able to combine them into 4. That's a lot less cumbersome and a lot easier to work with.
And these are intended to be accomplished in the next 12 to 18 months.
Right, after it's voted on and approved, then yes.
So, I see one difficulty in this. We talked about maybe going to quarterly retreats. Better start planning the date ahead of time. Sometimes takes 6 months to get one.
I was gonna bring that up in the items to add on the board. Is about, we had, 'cause one of the things he talked about is like every where there's a 5th Saturday or Monday, I think,
That's a good idea.
during the year, there's 4 or 5 of them, I think, and so it's something that, yeah, good point, no.
We'll have Katie start setting up the next meeting to find a time that you're available. We're either trying to look at those Monday nights.
Well, I think having a beat rate or a cadence to it, with the idea of the 5th Monday of the month.
Yeah, the only problem with that is I got to looking at that on the day that we were talking about it, and I got my calendar out. And if I remember right, you have a 5th Monday in May, but that 5th Monday is Memorial Day. So then you don't have another 5th Monday until August 30th.
So maybe it's once a quarter, something that every 3 months. So, January, February, March, May, June, July, August, September, or November, December, something like that. I mean, we can divide it, slice it and dice it however we want, but anyway, I guess the outcome is we wanna have an additional 3 to 4 meetings, that are focused on board goals. Is that per year?
Right. Why don't you go ahead and put on your schedules now, August 30th, that Monday night, and we'll call it a board retreat, let me put it this way, as diverse as your schedules are, it's easier to ask you to do it right now.
August 30th, is that what you said?
Yes, August 30th, it's a Monday night. We can start at 7 p.m., or we can start later, depending on your pleasure. And then, if we just get it on the calendar right now, then it's much simpler than if we wait a few weeks.
Any other conversation or discussion around the board retreat? So actions from that is, the board needs to have people identified for interviews by the March 8th meeting. And we've scheduled August 30th as our next conversation around board goals.
The next 5 days is November 29th, and that is not Thanksgiving week. That's the Monday after Thanksgiving.
The next what?
The next 5 Monday month.
Oh, okay.
So.
Yeah, I mean, November what?
29th.
All right.
Did we say January 29th?
The next one after that is January 31st.
November 29th, okay.
I know, I'm sorry. August 30th, November 29th, then the one after that is January 31st. I think it'd be a good idea to get it on your calendar. We could always change it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we usually have a retreat in January, February.
But it would be a perfect time.
You're also gonna have new board members.
Yeah, it actually,
True.
because there could be some new board members.
Yep. So I would put it on there now. We can always get rid of it. giving you plenty of notice.
That's just then, we would have a meeting that next week too, on those fifth Monday.
Right.
First Monday in the week, right?
Yeah. Well,
No, second and fourth.
second,
So we'd have two in a
fourth,
row.
so.
You'd have two in a row.
Two in a row. But we could say 7 and 9, limited to 2 hours and move on. All right. Moving on to informal discussion presentation. Mr. Anderson?
Yes. I am not fully prepared to, persuade this case. I just did want to reiterate that I was just making observations in our country and not, making observations of our district. So, I just see some things going on in some other places and wanted to just confirm to myself or ourselves that, we're doing what we can, you know, to uphold our country. So, I'll bring that back. I will shoot to have that ready for the next, board meeting. I did just want to make sure that I think there was a little confusion about my comments at the last meeting, and I wanted to clarify that that was a general item, not a specific, district item.
Okay.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I went home and talked to one of my kids about that, and she said the exact same thing. She got the same I got the same feedback from her that you got from yours. It was interesting. Surprised me.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an important and, you know, as we talked about with SHEs and opportunities that have come to the forefront, I've had the opportunity to be in Mr. Winkler's government class, senior government. Brandon's in that class, so meaning while we were all on quarantine, I could hear some of that class. It was extremely interesting. He's doing a great job, but I think it might be very valuable to get his input as well, because I think some of the things that you might be concerned about are things that are being covered. So maybe if we could get his input, I think it would be really great. He's a fantastic teacher.
Well, I'll have it ready to talk about the next meeting, and we can decide where we go from there and see if, we do want to do something like that as a group, so. Thanks for bearing with me on that.
Okay, moving on to items from Board of Education members for future meetings. I was gonna, there were two things I thought, Jason, you brought up a conversation around.
Oh, yeah, that.
Tennis court, what is that?
Sure.
What does that mean? What does that encompass?
It's just, I just want to in on the bond discussion. It doesn't have to be a separate discussion. I just want it in on the bond discussion whenever that comes about.
And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up was this fifth Monday idea, and we've already covered that, so. Yeah, done. Write it down, then you can mark it off.
No, I do that all the time.
Yeah. Any other items from board members for future meetings, other conversations to?
Ms. Sealing, I would ask if we can take off the Southside Mission food assistance. It's not necessarily a board item, but it could be an administration type of item.
Yeah, that is more of an administration type item that we're kind of waiting for them to navigate through COVID.
Sure.
And then get that started, but it's certainly in place. I met with them twice, and, they really want to partner with the food pantry and see what they can do to partner with each school, but this year absolutely got turned upside down before we were able to finish that conversation, so. It's okay to take it off the board's list, but it'll still be on our list, so I can work towards with the district.
Exactly, that sounds great. I think we need it, so it's just.
Yeah, it's a very neat program to help build community, which kind of also relates back to what we've been talking about too, so I can bring updates about it for sure as we progress farther with that.
Anything else to add? Any other items to add?
I know that Mrs. Mitchell has shared lessons learned. I'm guessing about COVID and our approach to that sort of thing. I don't know if you wanted to do a presentation, but I'd like to get that somewhat started, at least and maybe this is something that the board needs to do about our own lessons learned through this process with, Gating
Mhm.
criteria, not having gating criteria, you know. Maybe the board needs to do our own lessons learned before the district does their own lessons learned.
No, I think that would be a good discussion to have maybe towards summer, like
Okay.
what we've learned about process and trust and different things.
Yeah, maybe we can.
So maybe that'd be a better topic of board
Right.
lessons learned, yeah.
Yeah.
Good idea.
And then, I mean, I think we need help facilitating those discussions. So if, the superintendent or assistant superintendent can help facilitate those, I would, be very appreciative.
That kind of ties into something I've been thinking about. There is going to be a discussion coming. It might be in August, but it's gonna be about masks. Is there something we can do now or get started on? Are we gonna follow the state? Are we gonna follow the CDC? We got caught last time assuming the state would help us, and then they threw it in our lap. I don't wanna do that again.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything we can start thinking about or discussing, but it could be something we could put on before school starts in the fall.
I think it
So
really
maybe that's just
depends.
mitigation strategies, like what does the mitigation strategies look like going forward? I mean, definitely it is very positive to see that our percent positive in the county is down to 4.3%. We're definitely trending in the right direction, and thanks, Lord.
Yeah, I think it all has to depend on herd immunity, what the epidemiologists say about herd immunity. We could have it, I've seen reports as early as April, I've seen reports as the summer. I think that we just have to continue to watch what the epidemiologists say about that, but I agree that this is something that should be on our radar, probably in June or July, so that parents and students are prepared, parents, students are prepared for what we need to do. I'm hoping we get to herd immunity as soon as possible, so.
Well, I think what you mean, Brent, is just so I mean, obviously, if the whole world was blindsided by this, but whatever we can do to get in front of it so that it's not like that again.
Predict the future.
Right, and I would say probably in the June timeframe.
Sounds good.
We need to have, so add that to the items you have then? Okay, thank you.
And I had one additional item. I'd like to get, JC to give us kind of an update on food maybe after school year or something. Just kind of where we stand and where we're going. It's been a few, yeah, I think that'd be better once doesn't have to worry about feeding kids anymore.
And then with the tour of Johnson County Community College, I'm not sure that we're ready for a tour, but one of the things that I would love to have is the new president come and either we have a meeting with him, Zoom meeting with him, or he can come. Isn't it the new president, he? Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Anyway, you wanna meet with the.
Come introduce himself to us, since, I don't know what that procedure is necessarily, but I'd like to hear from him in the direction of the community college and that sort of thing, if that's possible.
Communication with the new Johnson County Community College president. All right, other items to add for future board meetings? What else? All right, moving along. Superintendent's report, Dr. Burke.
Usually, we don't have a superintendent's report on this meeting, because this is basically your morning meeting, but, sometimes, the board makes a really good decision, and sometimes you don't know how good the decision you made. So, at the last board meeting, we went ahead and moved forward and locked in our interest rates, and we saved the district over $1 million in refinancing bonds. That's incredible. If we would have waited until this board meeting and locked in, we would have lost $250,000. So we would have went from saving $1 million to being right around $750,000. So sometimes moving a little faster is really, really good savings. Now, I had somebody call and ask about this. We don't that money is just money you don't have to pay. You know what I mean? We didn't all of a sudden not have to spend, or we basically don't have to spend $1 million. We didn't get $1 million, we just don't have to spend $1 million. So that's still nice for our taxpayers. So, but anyway, Greg Varenberg got hold of Doug and I just not too long after that meeting and said the interest rates went up, and he verified it last week. And so by being diligent, being ready to move, you saved $1 million and so I wanted to applaud the board in it. The other thing is, I want to say, and I think this has been brought up at another couple of meetings, but our budget is probably going to be a little tight next year. And when I say tight, that doesn't mean panic. That doesn't mean we need to cut anything. It just means Doug always talks about the rubber band being stretched, and so we're probably going to be watching that rubber band. When you think about, we got 69 new kids, were we expecting 200 some odd kids? Again, we didn't lose that money, we just never got that money. What we fully expect, though, is probably 200 kids are going to show up next year. With those kids showing up and the delay in the funding from the state, we have to prepare for that. And in preparing for that, we've spent some time. There's some very positive things going on. When Doug gets ready to do the budget, he will share those things with you. But I just want to be careful, because sometimes we have a tendency to say we're not going to increase the mill levy. We need to be very careful of that. We've kept our promises. Anytime we've said we're not going to increase the mill levy, we haven't. But I don't want it just to become a rule of thumb that we go around and say, hey, we're not going to increase the mill levy. We think that we can handle next year without a mill levy increase. But if some things drastically happen between now and then, we lose a boiler or two, or something catastrophic comes, then we may have to look at mill levy increases. So I just want to be very careful about that. So again, this isn't a panic. It isn't like, let's not spend money. That's not what this is about. It's like, just be careful about our verbiage and what we say. We did get some good news today. The ESSER II funds that were coming in, ESSER II is based on Title I. Fortunately or unfortunately, we don't have a lot of Title I kids in Spring Hill. And so the base amount of money that we get is pretty low compared to some areas around us. A school district like Hutchinson is getting $5 million. That's an additional amount of money because they have more Title I kids. Spring Hill, we don't have as many Title I kids. Whereas they may be getting $2,000 a kid, we may get $180 a kid. But the state school board got together and thought we need to have a baseline that is minimal, that is fair for everybody. And the thing is, whether you're a wealthy district, a mid-level district, or a poor district, you still have to spend money for COVID-19. And so what they did is, instead of saying, if you're poor, you get all this money for COVID-19, and if you're rich, you don't, they got the baseline up. So I believe it went up $300, and so our total amount of money that we'll receive from COVID and COVID expenses is about $996,000. We're projected to spend $1 million. So that means if we only have to reach in our coffers and pull $6,000 to $10,000, we're pretty happy at that. That's a lot better than when we were thinking we're going to have to pull, a couple $100,000 out. So we got some good news today. But I wanted to throw that out, but more importantly, just wanted to say, you guys made a decision that saved your taxpayers $250,000 last board meeting. Not very often do you get to say that, so good job. With that, I'm finished.
Thank you. Moving on to, we do need an executive session this evening.
Mr. President, I move that the board recess into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel to protect the privacy interests of an identifiable individual under coma. Those to be in session include the Board of Education members, Superintendent of Schools, Assistant Superintendent of Schools, and Director of Human Resources, and others as requested. The executive session to begin at 8:55, with the open meeting resuming at 9:10 in this place. No later than 9:10 at this place.
Second.
Moved seconded to move to executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel under coma. Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start the vote with Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
approved.
Very good, thank you.
Are you gonna stay here? Goodbye.
So we're gonna wait 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. Vote to, need to vote to extend.
Mr. President, I move the board extend our executive session till no later than 9:20.
Second.
Moved second and moved to extend to no later than 9:20. Candy, please collect the vote.
Okay, Mrs. Ewing? Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt?
Yes.
Mr. Updike?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Candy.
back.
Oh, there's Candy.
Okay, we're back in open session. We do have one action item remaining. Action for personnel.
Mr. President, I move that the board hire, for the position of Director of Communication and Education Engagement, Christopher Villarreal. Sorry.
Second.
It's moved and second to accept the proposal of Christopher for Director of Communication and Education Engagement. Any final discussion or conversations?
Looking forward.
Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start the vote with Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt?
Yes.
Mr. Updike?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Approved.
Welcome.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and second to adjourn. Candy, please collect the vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved.
We're adjourned.